There are moments in every life when the soul stirs, when a whisper echoes in the corridors of our mind, and we sense that something is amiss, not in the world alone, but within us. It is then that we must ask, is God trying to warn me? The warnings of God are not the cracks of a judge's gavel, but the whispers of a father calling his child home. If you find your plans unraveling, if the pleasures you once chased now taste bitter, if doors you once walked through with ease are now locked, take heed. This may not be misfortune, but mercy in disguise. The first sign is when what once delighted you now leaves you empty. There was a time when sin felt sweet, when indulgence brought pleasure without regret. But now, the very things that once satisfied you begin to taste bitter. The conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. The habits you once excused now weigh heavy on your heart. This is not mere dissatisfaction. It is a divine awakening. God, in his mercy, does not allow his children to find lasting joy in things that will destroy them. The world promises fulfillment, but delivers only momentary pleasure, followed by deeper longing. When God begins to work in your life, he strips away the illusion, allowing you to see sin for what it truly is, a counterfeit joy, an empty promise. This moment of realization is not meant to shame you, but to save you. It is the moment in which he gently whispers, you were not made for this. The danger is in ignoring this warning. Many silence it by chasing greater indulgence, numbing their soul to the discomfort of conviction. But those who listen, who pause long enough to recognize that this emptiness is not a curse but a calling, will find themselves at the threshold of transformation. For it is in that emptiness that God begins to pour out true fulfillment. He does not take away our lesser joys to leave us desolate. He removes them so that we may hunger for something greater, something eternal. When sin no longer satisfies, do not run back to it in desperation. Let it go and turn to the one who has been calling you all along. Some call it bad luck, when things begin to fall apart, when plans unravel and what was once secure slips through their fingers. But for those who belong to God, there are no coincidences. When the structures you built begin to shake, it is not always destruction. It may be divine intervention. God will sometimes allow what you depend on to collapse, not because he delights in your suffering, but because he desires to set you on a firmer foundation. We are often too blind to see when we have placed our trust in the wrong things. We cling to careers, relationships, financial security, or even our own wisdom as if they will hold us forever. But in his mercy, he removes the very things we idolize, not to punish us, but to remind us that they were never meant to sustain us. The discomfort of loss is not the absence of God's presence. It is often the evidence of his nearness. He is tearing down the walls that imprison you, even if you mistook them for shelter. If your plans are failing, if doors are shutting, if everything seems to be slipping away, pause and ask, is God trying to get my attention? The greatest mistake is to resist, to try to rebuild what God is dismantling. What he removes, he does so with purpose. What he strips away, he does so in love. And if you yield, if you surrender and trust that he is guiding even in the breaking, you will soon see that he was not taking something from you, he was preparing something far greater for you. What feels like loss now is only the clearing of space for something eternal. There are seasons when God isolates you, pulling you away from the crowds, silencing the noise and stripping away distractions. At first, it may feel like rejection, like abandonment, as if the people you trusted have suddenly disappeared. But what if this solitude is not a curse, but a calling? What if, in the stillness, God is preparing you for something greater? We often resist being alone, filling every moment with noise, conversations, entertainment, busyness, anything to avoid facing ourselves. But God knows that transformation happens in the quiet. When he removes people from your life, it is not always because they have wronged you, but because they are no longer meant to walk the next part of your journey. Some relationships, though once good, can become a hindrance if they keep you from hearing God's voice. Look at the moments in Scripture when God called his people to solitude. Moses met God on the mountain alone. Elijah heard his voice in the wilderness, not in the whirlwind, but in the still small whisper. Even Christ himself withdrew to lonely places to pray. It is in these moments of isolation that our hearts are most open, our ears most attuned to the divine. If you find yourself alone, do not rush to fill the silence. Do not assume it is misfortune. Instead, lean into it. Ask, Lord, what are you trying to teach me? This may be the season where he refines you, where he prepares you for what is to come. And when the time is right, when the work in you is complete, he will bring the right people, the right opportunities, and the right purpose into your life, according to his perfect will. There comes a time when a strange restlessness stirs within you, an uneasiness that you cannot explain. The life you once found comfortable now feels too small, as if your soul is pressing against unseen walls. What once satisfied no longer does. You feel a deep sense that there is more to understand, more to become, more that God is calling you to step into. This is not ordinary boredom or impatience. It is the holy discontent that God places in those he is preparing for something greater. It is the same stirring that moved Abraham to leave his homeland without knowing where he was going. It is the same divine discomfort that led the disciples to leave their nets behind when Jesus called them. The world will tell you to ignore this feeling, to silence it with entertainment, routine, and distractions. But those who belong to God cannot remain where they are when he is calling them forward. This restlessness is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you were made for more than where you are now. It is God unsettling you so that you do not become too comfortable in a place that was never meant to be permanent. If you are feeling this divine stirring, do not suppress it. Seek him in prayer, in his word, and ask, Lord, what are you preparing me for? The greatest mistake is to resist his prompting, to stay where it is safe and familiar when he is calling you into the unknown. Trust that he does not stir your soul without purpose. When God begins to move within you, it is because he is preparing to move around you. Do not fear the change, embrace it, for it is leading you closer to him. There is a weight upon your heart, a heaviness that will not leave. No matter how much you try to distract yourself, no matter how much you justify your choices, something deep within you will not let you rest. This is conviction, not condemnation. It is not the voice of an accuser seeking to destroy you. It is the voice of a father calling you back before it is too late. Conviction is one of the clearest signs that God is warning you. When he places his hand upon your heart, pressing upon you the sense that something must change, it is because he sees the path ahead more clearly than you do. Sin is deceitful. It dulls the heart, numbs the conscience, and blinds the eyes. But conviction is God's mercy breaking through the fog, awakening you before you drift too far. Many ignore this warning, choosing instead to silence it with distractions. Some drown it in busyness, others in pleasure, convincing themselves that if they do not think about it, it will go away. But conviction does not leave until it has done its work. It is a gift, a beacon calling you home. To resist it is to harden the heart, to walk further into darkness until even the warnings fade. If you feel this weight upon you, do not push it aside. Instead, bring it before God in humility. Ask him to search your heart, to reveal what must be surrendered, to lead you into repentance. His conviction is never to shame you, but to restore you. The weight is not meant to crush you. It is meant to drive you into the arms of grace, where true freedom is found. You prayed for it, hoped for it, and believed it was meant for you. Yet, the door remains shut. No matter how much effort you put in, no matter how many times you knock, it will not open. At first you may feel frustrated, even abandoned, wondering why God would withhold something you desired so deeply. But what if this closed door is not rejection, but protection? God sees what we cannot see. He knows the outcome before we take the first step. What looks like a missed opportunity to us may, in reality, be a hidden trap. Perhaps that job you desperately wanted would have drawn you away from him. Perhaps that relationship you fought for would have become a source of pain rather than joy. Perhaps the path you tried to take would have led to destruction rather than fulfillment. Because he loves you, he shuts the door. At times, God allows delays, roadblocks, and rejections not because he is withholding something good, but because he is leading you toward something better. The mistake many make is trying to force open a door that God has locked. They push and push, refusing to accept that his no is actually grace. But a door forced open in disobedience will never bring peace. Instead of fighting against the closed door, surrender to the one who holds the keys. Trust that if he has said no, it is for your good. Ask him to guide your steps, to reveal the right path, to give you peace in the waiting. One day you will look back and thank him, not for the doors that open, but for the ones that remain shut. For in his wisdom he never takes without the intention to give something greater. When God warns, it is never out of cruelty, but out of love. He does not shake your world to destroy you, but to awaken you. If you find yourself restless, if sin no longer satisfies, if doors are closing, if conviction presses upon your heart, do not ignore these signs. They are not coincidences. They are not meaningless disruptions. They are the whispers of a father calling his child back before it is too late. To dismiss his warnings is to walk further into darkness, to harden your heart until his voice becomes distant. But to heed them is to step into his grace, to align yourself with his will, and to receive the life he has always intended for you. The world will tell you to silence the discomfort, to push forward in your own strength, to chase what you desire at any cost. But God calls you to something higher, something eternal. The question is not whether he is warning you, the signs are already there. The question is, will you listen? Will you allow him to redirect your path, to refine your heart, to lead you into something far greater than what you could have built for yourself? The warnings of God are not the end of your story. They are the beginning of a new chapter, one written not by your own hands, but by his. If you see these signs, do not delay. Turn to him. For his warnings are not for your destruction, but for your salvation. And when you follow where he leads, you will find that his way, though it may not always be easy, is always good.